Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another super cool radio interview. I'm your host, Matthew Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm super excited because I have an awesome guest joining me at this time. He's a former MLB pitcher and the frontman for Pulley. Please welcome Scott Radinsky.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Good to be here.
It is awesome to have you on the podcast. I know we got quite a bit to discuss, obviously, with the split personality EP with Fire Sale and everything Pulley's been up to as well. But thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here, and I'm happy to spend it with you.
I really appreciate it. So before we really dive into everything with Pulley, so I got a fun music related question to kick this off. So I'm curious for you, a question I've been asked my guests this season. What is one album that you think is 10 out of 10, no skips, listen all the way through?
Any album.
Any album.
Pick any Descendants record, maybe the first one, Milo Goes to College, the Minor Threat discography. I mean, you choose, but there's so many. It's hard to just, it's like when someone asks who's your favorite band. It's like, how do you really choose a favorite band? But I think some of the records that I listened to when I was a kid, that just still stick with me, that I just was obsessed with every song and listened to them on repeat multiple times. So yeah, for me, there's more than one, but those couple I named have at it.
Oh, very nice. Well, I was curious to you with obviously with your upbringing and your just music career as well. So very very good picks. So all fantastic bands.
Yeah.
So kind of curious, so diving kind of more, into your career and everything. So what was your first interest? Was it baseball or music?
As far back as I can remember, there was music going on in my house. My dad toyed with the guitar a little bit, but there was always music going on. And, there was always some kind of sports going on, whether it was, football, basketball, baseball, whatever we were playing in the street. So, um, yeah, probably around the same time, early, kindergarten, first grade, I think was my first introduction to probably both.
With that, how'd you balance being an MLB pitcher and being a musician as well? Because Pulley's been around since 1994.
Um, Well, having four or 5 months off, depending on whether if I was in the big leagues or the minor leagues, in baseball, once I started, it, it became kind of easy. I had a certain time frame that I could be active and do stuff musically, and during the season, I could always had a guitar, so I could always write, and we would trade tapes back and forth through the mail back then, of ideas. So balancing has just kind of been normal. It's just, I've never really had to do it, so to speak, at the same time, but well, I guess I have, but just not at the same time. I always had that off time opportunities. So that's how I balanced it.
Kind of going along with this, and we'll be jumping into more present day Pulley with the split EP. With your teammates being in baseball and the baseball culture, how was it being a punk rock musician in baseball?
Yeah, early on it was kind of taboo. I didn't really talk a whole lot. People would say, "Oh, you're in a band, you're in a rock band." Yeah, I'm in a rock band, and I just kind of leave it at that. Because trying to explain in the mid '80s to a teammate from Georgia, they just didn't get it, and trying to explain it to a reporter who was kind of naive to the whole thing, they didn't get it. So I just kind of kept it under wraps the best I could until God, it was probably around the mid '90s when the internet hit, and then there was just no more escaping it. There was no more hiding behind anything because everything's public, and all they had to do is dig onto a computer and whatever research they wanted. So for the first 10 or so years, it was relatively easy, just to kind of ignore the subject. And then after that, I kind of had no choice but to, deal with it. And, I think in the music scene, I think people became a little more open to it back somewhere around the mid '90s, 2000s. All of a sudden, there became these sports fans that were into punk rock. So it was a little easier for me to embrace it and accept the fact that I was part of both worlds, and I wasn't embarrassed.
Kind of funny, like with me, like I grew up as like a baseball family, like obviously like Chicago Cubs being close to, Chicago. And then like I got older and then like I got into punk music and all of this stuff. So it's kind of funny, like, how, the cultures are kind of, obviously very drastically different, but there is some overlay now, especially with, the fans of both baseball and punk music.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything, any kind of music, you look at rock from the 60s was, considered really hard, and now it's standard play, you walk into a department store. And I think punk rock, we're going on 30 years now of, Green Day and the Offspring kind of breaking through. So it's become a little more of the norm. And I can remember my parents, saying to me in the early 80s, that's just a fad. It's like everything skateboarding. It'll die out. Well, yeah, I mean, actually it just grew and it became more accepted. So I've always felt like, and I don't mean to come off the wrong way by saying this, but I always felt like anybody involved in that music was kind of ahead of the curve, and it just took the rest of society to catch up.
I think so, especially, the stuff that became, people thought were fads that would go away, it became more mainstream, punk music, skateboarding, all of that stuff. Like that's, as you said, widely accepted, and you see it, on TV nowadays and everything. It's more widely accepted, which is really cool to see. And it just shows, like with your comment being ahead of the curve, that it's become more accepted in society, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, it's great. And why wouldn't it? Every generation's got to have something to cling on to. And I think, the generations that have come, or the eras that have come, in the last 20, 30 years, their history is that. So, to be part of something when it's like kind of new and fresh and groundbreaking. I wasn't really around in the late 70s or, uh, that era of punk rock, but I think that second phase of punk rock that hit LA, and got into suburbia and the hardcore and, the bands that I was growing up on, they've never been considered mainstream. They've never broke into the mainstream world, but they definitely were the foundation for the bands that came in the next wave and helped, kind of kickstart them into that era of music. And it was at that point, it was time society was ready to accept it. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see all those phases. I'm not sure where it's at this moment, but I know where it's come from. That's for sure.
Oh, definitely, for sure, for sure. But that does lead me to more present day now. So Pulley and Fire Sale have the Split Personality EP out right now. It's 4 killer songs, 2 from Pulley, 2 from Fire Sale. So like, I'm kind of curious. So like, how this Split EP come about? Like, who reached out to who?
Well, Chris from Fire Sale has a podcast that one time on tour, and I've done a few episodes with him. When we've had releases in the past, so we've kind of developed somewhat of a working relationship, friendship type, mutual friendship. And when they started Fire Sale, we've always kept in touch, and Matt, a former bass player of ours, actually plays in the band, so there is a connection there. And Chris reached out with the idea of doing a split, and it sounded like a great idea. 2 songs sounded easy. We had the motivation, and we had some music together, so just kind of happened pretty quick and organically, and I'm glad it did.
Well, for sure. I very much enjoy it. Like, they're 4 awesome songs, from 2 bands who I know Chris. I've interviewed him for my podcast. Awesome person, great musician. And just listening to it, it just sounds incredible. Like, you get both bands delivered just their best.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think there's definitely similarities in the genre. I mean, we could play a show together. It wouldn't be an odd bill, but I think there's enough differences, musically that kind of keep it interesting. And I think that all the songs were, structured well and recorded well and make for easy listening.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I very much enjoy it. So I'm kind of curious. So like, what was kind of like the writing recording process for the 2 songs on this EP?
Well, for us, we didn't really plan on recording or have anything, so to speak, done. but we always have ideas, and that's a constant. So, um, when we committed to doing it, it was like kind of sit back and let's kind of filter through what ideas we have, and then usually Mike and I, or well, our guitar player Mike and myself, will start that process and kind of structure things, around vocals and try to come up with some melodies, and that's kind of how we do it, and then it just kind of happened quick after that.
I really like it, and plus the artwork for it, with like the really leading into the split personality thing. I think it looks awesome with like half the face of the band members at the other band and all of that. I think it turned out incredible.
When you get Mark DeSalvo involved, the artist, he's been a part of 5 or 6 of our releases now, and whatever comes out, it's going to be great. And I think we threw him the idea, or they threw him the idea of the title, and maybe a little bit of a direction, and he just kind of elaborates from there, and it always comes out great. So that's one part of the package that's just really really good. And when you can put some strong music with really nice graphics, it makes for a really nice package.
Oh, for sure. It musically appealing, visually appealing, and it just the whole thing, as you said, the package is awesome. So it's available on vinyl right now. You got some cool shirts. I'm probably gonna pick some of those up as well on Negative Progression Records. I'll leave that link in the description as well. Will there be more new music on the horizon?
We're in a band. I mean, that's what we do. We write music, we record it, we play shows. All I can say is there's no signs of stopping. We enjoy playing together, so I would imagine that it's just going to be natural. Whenever there's nothing, there's no calendar, there's no date set, but yeah, of course. Like I said, this is what we do. We write music, we play it live, and we get along with each other. So I don't see anything changing down the road.
Well, right on, right on. Well, very, very cool, and definitely, I obviously very much enjoy Pulley, so definitely look forward to more new music whenever that does happen in the future. But kind of curious, so now kind of transitioning, I wanted to talk about the live performance side as well. So I'm curious for you, like, do you approach like writing, recording music differently than performing live at a venue?
Yeah, it's a different preparation. When you record, you have the opportunity to really take your time and make things as perfect as you can. Whether that's maybe sometimes singing one line or going back and you try to sing as much as you can in one chunk, to give that natural live feeling. But most of the time an engineer or a producer is striving for perfection. So hey, that line was great, but the last word was out of tune, so we're going to punch you in for that last word, and you start to fix things up like that. Live, it's kind of like it's like hanging your balls out there, man. I mean, you're going for it, and there's no holding back. There's just you got to go for it. And sometimes I just it's like taking that shot from half court. You just throw it up in the air and you hope for the best. And then other times it gets really difficult when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 nights in a row, and you're trying to pull this off, and maybe you're in a different register now because I can't hit those high notes. So I'll sing the low, and the bass player Tyler will sing the high or something. And you try to make it the best you can, but live's difficult. I'm not going to say recording isn't difficult, but live is they're both totally two different animals, and definitely it's a different approach going into both.
Oh, it definitely is. As you said, two different animals with everything. But I think with the live, it's like, instant. Like, you have the crowd there and they can tell if they're digging it or not just right away based on, who they are. But it's also like the energy exchange between the crowd and the performers as well. So, yeah, definitely two different things. But also you got like a live audience while you're performing.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, sometimes that audience will get the best out of you. And then sometimes they'll sit there and it could be a small crowd who's just kind of watching and maybe not showing much interest. And it's a different type of challenge where you could sit there and go two ways, either disgusted and irritated with the outcome, or, I'm going to win them over, and I'm going to treat this like there's, 1,000 people here tonight, and we're going to give these 17 people the best show they could possibly get. And it just depends. It's really hard sometimes. It's humbling, and sometimes it's super gratifying. But still at the end of the day, the opportunity to play music with your friends is kind of like what we all started out for. And all bands start out in the garage with that in mind, is you want to play live and you want to record, you want to write songs and play live. And so I think anytime you get the opportunity, you need to be thankful for it and approach that challenge, however it is. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's easy, the crowd's already won over, and then sometimes you got to win them over. And yeah, it's fun.
Oh, no, it definitely is. And, I think it's also, I mean, anytime, any kind of performance, it's always fun because you're doing what you love. But also, like, when you get to win over a crowd, though, to me, that's almost like more gratifying in itself, is that, like, they started off thinking one opinion and then by the end they love it. And I think that is just so cool when that happens organically.
For sure. And I can think back to a couple of shows. One, we opened for Social Distortion years ago, and another one was for Black Flag just a few years ago. And neither one of those crowds, which they have their own built-in audience, really aren't, I wouldn't say not. I'm sure there are some people in the crowds that maybe knew who we were or heard of us or something, but probably wouldn't come to our show if we were playing on our own. So I remember going into those two nights, and both went over amazing, but it was work. And it took a few songs, and you could see it slowly start to grow by song 2, song 3, song 4, song 5. And maybe they were older people at these shows, coming to see those bands, and they might not have been as, active, energetic, but you could see the heads starting to bob up and down, and you could see the applause starting to become more and more by every song. And then after we got done playing, people would come up and go, "Wow, man, I never heard of you guys. That was fucking awesome. And I really like you." And whether they go and buy a CD or listen to the music or buy a shirt is irrelevant. The fact that they were impressed at that moment enough to make those comments, that's what being in a band's all about.
Oh, for sure. And it's just that, connection with music. Music is universal, that even if, people don't know the music, they can still connect and understand it. And, at the end of the day, become fans and friends as well. Focusing on like the Pulley set, I'm curious for you, this might be a challenging question, but I'm curious for you. What is your favorite Pulley song to perform live?
I have a few. One of the first songs we ever recorded was called Cashed In. And to me, I've just never gotten tired of playing that. It's, sometimes we open with it, sometimes we play it, at the end of the set. But that's one song that I still enjoy playing live. There are others that I enjoy playing live, Hooray for Me, but there's parts in the songs where vocally I know it's going to be challenging, and I love the song up to a certain point, and then I'm like just crossing my fingers hoping I can hit it tonight. And yeah, there's a few, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Cashed In.
Kind of going along with that, I did want to transition just to a few other topics before we start to head out, but I'm curious for you, since we're talking about music, we're talking about albums throughout this interview. So I'm curious for you, what is the Pulley album that you are most proud of?
Well, I'm actually proud of them all. I'm really proud of the first one with how it came together so quick, and I thought we wrote really good songs and performed them. Um, I'm really proud of the third record, the self-titled record. I'm proud of the fourth record. I'm proud of Matters, the fifth record, which we really learned a lot, on the production side and how to arrange and write music, centered around vocals. I'm proud of the last couple songs we did. So once again, to narrow something down and say, which one are you the most proud of? I guess I'm proud in different ways on every one of them. And, sometimes when you do something for the first time, it's always your most memorable, that it's the first impression anybody has. When I know the backstory of how things came together and how it happened so fast and the songs were written, I guess I'm really proud of that one. But like I said, I'm proud of all of them in different ways.
I mean, I've listened to some of the Pulley albums and catalog and stuff, and I can just see like, and just talking to you that you're passionate about music, and it comes through. Like, it sounds like you guys are having fun making music that you like, and it comes through. And like on the albums that I've listened to and the music I've listened to, even up to the most recent release was Fire Sale as well. It shows.
Yeah, you mentioned something that when I made the first phone call to my friend Mike, who happened to be a guitar player in previous bands with me, but he wasn't in the band I was in at the time. And when I was let go from that band, I knew that music wasn't going to end in my life. So I think the next day he was the first phone call I made. And I said, hey, man, I said, you want to start a band? Start a band about having fun. Let's just have fun. And I think that's been kind of the overall approach over the last 30 years is let's continue to have fun, because in the competitive world of the music business, and if you go on tour, you'll know what I'm talking about. Backstage is, I call it tour talk. It's like people get back there and it's like almost like you can't have a conversation with anybody about anything unless it's revolving around music, what you're trying to do. We're going to go here, we're going to go there. We recorded this. It's all name dropping and everything. And it's just not what our band's about. And, we're kind of like, I think, feet on the ground, take it as it comes. We've never tried to make it. We're not trying to make it. We'll never advertise that our ticket sales are sold out or low ticket morning, I joke about that because I see it on advertisements all the time. And it's like, I think, damn, the same opening band's always playing. It's like no sold out or or low ticket warnings always on the bill, on somebody's bill. And I'm not sitting here to ridicule other people and how they handle their business, but going back to, your question, the fun is kind of what it's always been about. And yeah, we want to sound good. We want to make good music, but we want to get along with each other and not at the cost of trying to make it as a band. And I think that's the downfall to a lot of bands and, why they break up, why things get tough for them is you go out and, you go out and try to play 200 shows a year. And after a while, if it doesn't get any better, people get irritable and they lose interest. And, how many times can you go to the same market and play the same clubs in front of 100 people? And it's great. And like, I have all the respect in the world for the people that do it, but ask them if it's fun. And I'd really like to see if they give an honest answer.
To me, if it's not fun, I don't like to do it. And also with that, I think with some bands, and not to speak for anyone in particular, but like they just want to do it because they think they're going to, make a bunch of money and be rich and all this. And as I've learned in the music industry, that is not the case, very much. That you do it because you love it, and maybe the money will come later.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can think of tons of people that have, went for it. And I respect that, and hats off to them. And maybe a couple, it's actually worked out. And they're actually making a nice living and carving themselves a nice career in the music industry. But like you said, that's not the case most of the time. 99% of the time, it's not going to happen. If that's your motive, then you're probably going about it the wrong way to begin with. And then on the other side, unfortunately, there's a lot of guys that you invested your 20s and now you're into your 30s, and it's like, oh shit, now I'm mid 40s pushing 50, and it's like it's kind of late in this point to get a job, so I got to keep doing what I'm doing. And inside you're probably miserable and you're making just enough money to pay your rent and eat, so you keep doing it and you enjoy being on the road and you like playing live. But the bottom line is, when it's all over and done, what are you going to do? And there's a lot of people that, I think are in their 50s and 60s that like had a hell of a ride and enjoyed it, but like maybe might have made some different decisions along the way to make life a little easier on the back end. I don't know. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but that's the way I see it.
Oh, for sure. Very, very good perspective with that. Unfortunately, people do fall into that. And then it's like no clear way to get out of it. So they just keep doing it and they're more miserable and stuff. And that's not what music should be. It should be fun.
It should be fun. And I'm not here to preach about alcohol usage or doing drugs because, I'm sure we've all experimented and done our thing, but, I think that's where a lot of those addictions and problems, family issues become an issue, because it's lonely. And even the biggest bands around will tell you that it's hard. It's hard to tour. It's hard to travel. It's hard to be on the go. It's a big demand, and the older you get, the harder it gets. When people start having families and other things, and they start looking at outlets for that escape, and to help kind of pass the time, and sometimes it turns out pretty sad. I think if you look at some of the bands that are a little more successful in our genre of music right now, and I speak for like the bigger bands. There are bands that go out and tour, and they're trying to play a ton, and that's because they have to. But some of the bigger bands, they've kind of really scaled down that touring, and now you see it's like, oh, it's a 10-day run here, or it's a 7-day run there, and they've learned how to make it manageable and sustain it. And I think I respect that a lot for them, because they probably could go out and do 150 or 200 shows, but they don't have to, so they don't, and they keep it interesting. They haven't oversaturated themselves. People are aware who they are, and they go to the shows, but they don't go twice a year to the same city. So they continue to have success. And like I said, I think those bands that are fortunate to still be around have figured that out, how to manage that.
I've talked to other bands where it's like the cost of touring is so much that, you're not even, you're already behind on cost before you even tour. So like with that, to be smarter with that and do either shorter runs and keep interesting set and all of this, and don't play the same city repeatedly, it's smarter, but also because it makes more sense for the band.
It does if, financially those bands are in a position to not have to play just to make the money. And like I say, I think there's some people that are, I know some bands right now, the guys are in their 40s and they don't have a choice, man. They got to play because they got to pay rent. And yeah, they might have a little side hustle that they do here and a side hustle they do there when they're not on tour. But, being on tour beats the hell out of working. So let's tour, let's go on tour. And I just think sometimes that it doesn't help a band grow as much as a booking agent or a manager might have a different side, obviously, because they're getting a percentage of every time you go out and play. So they want you to play. They want you to go out there and do stuff. And they push it, they encourage it. And I think sometimes that, I think bands fall into that. And I'm just very glad and fortunate that I've been with a group of people that's never been that way, and that's never been the desire from the outset. And like I said, if you go backstage to a Pulley show, you'll see 5 guys that actually hang out together because we like each other still, and that's important to us.
It is very important. I'm glad to see, because there's too many bands where everybody hates each other. So I'm glad to see that and to hear that with Pulley. So now I just got one more thing before we start to wrap up this interview. Scott, it's been incredible to chat with you. I really appreciate your time. It's been wonderful. But so I'm kind of curious. So like throughout Pulley's career that I mentioned started in '94 and your MLB career, what has been like some of the standout moments that have stuck with you from both music and baseball?
I think musically is the fact that we're sitting here today having this conversation about a current release that's we're still kind of, I don't know if the right word is relevant, but we're still involved in the scene, in the music. And back in my early days, that's kind of what it was all about, writing letters, trading letters and stuff, trading cassette tapes, that you'd record through fanzines and things. So that to still be around in literally both worlds. I just came home from coaching a team in Europe, a baseball tournament thing in Europe, and to have the opportunity to still do that, to have the opportunity to still record, play music live, those are the standout moments. It all leads up to this, and to still be able to do it in itself in both worlds. And that's all I've ever done, other than go to high school or go to school. This has been my life. So that, to me, this is how I hope I die, with still hanging on to both handles. I'm hanging on to the handlebars with both, on both grips, and I don't want to let go anytime soon. So that's something I'm proud of.
Oh, for sure. I'm glad to hear you're active still in both, universes and communities and stuff. It's awesome to hear that you're still, have a passion for it and you're still a part of it.
Yeah, for sure, because there's no financial reward, so I can take that out of the equation, and it's nice to know that, like, me personally, I can speak for myself, that I do have passion for both, and when you're a garage band or when you're just an average, and I say this, and I've never been a superstar in anything, um, good enough to survive, and that's the way it was put to me a long time ago. Is a lot of people can make it, but it takes a special person to survive, and I think when you can survive and fly under the radar, for this long, it's good, man. It's good.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It is. So now, as we close out this interview, so what are the plans for Pulley and yourself for the rest of 2025 and into early 2026?
Well, the plans for us right now, we have a few shows to finish out the year. We've got a couple shows already booked in January into next year, and we have a lot of things that are in discussion. Our time's kind of selective with the guys having jobs and stuff, so we have to pick and choose what we can do, and we're just kind of evaluating the opportunities right now and what makes the most sense for us to get to.
Well, right on. Well, I wish all the best with you and Pulley for the rest of this year and next year as well. I've been loving what you guys have been doing with the music and all of that. So, look, I wish you guys all the best.
Thanks, Matthew. Great talking to you, man.
Of course. I'll leave some links for Pulley in the description of this podcast. Please check out and support them. For Scott of Pulley, I'm your host, Matthew Thomas. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Super Cool Radio. And remember, stay frosty.